Welcome to Time to Glow Again, an educational webinar with Dr. Michelle Veneziano from her Principles and Practice of Osteopathic Self-Care series. I'm going to invite us to do this radical thing, which is choose a face on the screen to begin to come into this exquisite quality of attention, not staring, not like a laser beam, but sort of this soft, receptive, just receiving of the essence of a person. And this is a very quick way for us to drop in and drop into that place where what wants to come through today we'll be able to do that. So we're going to have a few silent moments of studying faces. And if you don't want to have your camera on, that's fine, right? We can't all be doing that all the time. And if you're not having your camera on, you're still welcome to look at another person. And if you're making breakfast or something, an alternative is feel some nuance of the sensory experience of the soles of your feet on your sock or the floor. We're going to simply bring our attention into present time and space to have our nervous systems come into regulation and have our energy bodies start to become coherent. The theme today is coherence. Okay. It's just this way of like, our attention goes out and sort of drinks from the surround. It could be the features of another person's face. Or could be simple as tuning in to a part of your body that calls your attention in this moment. For me, it's like the balls of the feet. There's some little vibratory something. It's like parts of the body call our attention because our attention moves energy. Parts of the body are like, I want to mobilize. I want to start to wake up. Can you bring your attention in? So just continuing to tune into sensation or bring out our curiosity and study the face of someone on the screen. And then somehow this is a deeply connecting experience that will support us arriving in present time and space. All right, now I'm feeling in a bit of an arriving sense of coalescing, or there's actually a quality when coherence comes into a space and we all begin to sync up on the same wave. It's a it's a phenomenon. It's described in mathematics and physics, and it's how nature works. And it's how tribal nature, it's that whole hive or tribe or herd kind of phenomenon where we all begin to sync up and not only share our power, but our intelligence. We actually begin to receive and give gifts to one another. If you're moving about your kitchen and your camera's off, Just bringing your attention into your breath, your sense of gravity meeting you either through your feet or through your contact with the chair or the floor or the couch. Okay, I actually don't want us to go too deep because today I want to do a little bit more walking through the specifics that you may have by now read about in the ebook that I shared with all of you that led up to this webinar. I just listened to last week's webinar and it was phenomenal, and it suddenly became this really deep meditative practice that didn't get so much into as many of the specifics of the book as I'd like to cover today. So today we don't have that massive full moon happening. I don't have meditation music on. I'm just tuning into what is really in service right now in this moment to what needs to be shared. So I'm going to read this short bio of myself. Well, most of you know by now, I'm Dr. Michelle Veneziano. I'm conventionally trained and also intuitive physician. And my short bio, a friend just texted me, read this. My approach to healing is rooted in cranial osteopathy, a practice that sources both Western and Eastern philosophies to support the body's ability to heal itself. And the ebook that I shared with you are really the 5 foundational aspects of all of the work that I share around self-healing, which I shared, and I will share briefly again, my story of myself 20 years ago, completely exhausted after medical school. I had a baby in a fixer-upper home. I had no time or money to receive much healing from others. And so I invoked all of these tools that are available to all of us at all times. I wouldn't call them tools. I would call them returning to native behaviors of breathing, sitting, walking, feeling, in order to invoke the state of essentially in training with the forces of nature so that we can be receiving basically electrical current from both the earth and the ionosphere. And not only potency, power, but also intelligence, right? The shared collective field, I would call it the infinite sea of consciousness that we exist in, that we are of, right? And then our physical presence is an extension of that, and the conceivably much smaller aspect of who we are. Today we'll be together for 60 minutes. I want to systematically walk through some of the larger statements about what this book might give to you, right? And then I want to leave plenty of time for you to ask questions and really have a communal dialogue. Let's make sure we're actually set up for flow sitting. And there's a diagram in the book that has the knees, right? I'm actually sitting on the edge of my chair because I don't have my good chair here yet that would have a slant. We want to imitate having the hips higher than the knees. And if you can do this, you can scoot to the front of your seat. And if you're on the floor, elevate your bottom so that the knees can rest on the ground. And basically what we're doing is we're moving the weight of the body to the legs. More than half the weight of the body can be on the thighs. We're creating this triangular, stable base so that we can free up the spine and the midline. It can be as simple as grabbing a towel and rolling it under your sit bones. Give people a few minutes to maybe grab a pillow and maybe roll it and put it under your sit bones. And just, I started most of the content of this book I started to offer to my patients who were in crisis, who I couldn't see immediately. And I would say, make sure you're not sitting in a hole and letting your back collapse, right? Not any of this forward rolling. This forward rolling in the body is this profound crowding around and shortening of the front body, which imitates fight or flight. It also crowds the heart, right? We begin to do this when we sit unconsciously. We don't even realize we're invoking this radical response in the nervous system that will stop you from breathing deeply and blunt or the electrical current running through the central axis and throughout the entire body. All right, so I noticed a few people just joined. I'm going to repeat what I just said. We're taking a few minutes to orient ourselves so that gravity is not compressing the midline, what we call the midline in osteopathy, the spine, the spinal cord, the chakral tree. We're allowing it to free up by moving our weight to our thighs, allowing our knees possibly to drop a little bit below our hips. And I'm noticing here, I did not do this intentionally. I'm beginning to circulate. My body's beginning to express a serpent-like, wave-like response. It happens to be counterclockwise in this moment. I did not do that on purpose. Your body will begin to do this. It's always trying to do this, and we simply block it unconsciously. Right? So the minute you start to de-weight that central axis, I'm in this moment noticing that bringing my attention a little bit out, right? It's a very martial that's a very martial principle to expand the attention, to almost allow your attention to create a space around you, which can begin to become electrically buoyant. Remember, energy follows attention, right? That's what it does. I would write that down. Chad, can you write that in the chat? Energy follows attention. Our attention, the wielding of our attention is our most powerful self-healing superpower, I would say. And the noticing, as we allow ourselves to drop into this fluid sitting, is to find that sweet spot. Right? The sweet spot in your position in your chair, you might not feel so comfortable doing exactly what I do. For some people, they're quite adapted to a flatter back and a more curved forward spine, and so they can't really open and completely right away. Find that most effortless sweet spot where suddenly you're just not doing any work and you're hovering in neutral. You're neither pushing yourself into extension nor forcing yourself into flexion by collapsing. You're finding that balance point where, suddenly I'm sort of teetering like a ball bearing that is mobile and free to begin to unwind. And that what might be beginning to happen for you now is you're expanding your attention, imagining floating in a sea of space. Maybe for you, the sweet spot is 1 foot off the body. For me, it's about 4 feet in this moment. Most effortless place to hold my attention is about 4 feet off the body in this moment. And then I simply begin to shift to noticing what will begin to happen, incremental responses in your physical tissues. For me, just now, it was heat. Heat coming into the fascia of the back of my body. The bringing of our attention into present time is so intensely powerful. This is really, it's like arriving, but it's also coming into presence and coherence with the entire environment. And then we begin to be held by it and powered by it. And then we'll add a little piece, which is we're growing like a tree, right? We're actually growing like a tree. We can send roots into the ground to begin to expand the potency of this river of life force through the center of the body. We can do just the right amount of that as well. What is the effortless amount of roots? Mine are extending. They want to extend from the balls of my feet. That's unusual. They feel like roots. Sometimes they're cables or beams of light that feel the most effortless, right? You will notice as you practice over time that different imagery will pop into your awareness. And maybe you don't necessarily have you're not necessarily receiving a clear message, and we kind of fake it till we make it. We call it roughing it in. And we choose something and we visualize. Perhaps it's your legs actually extending through the crust of the earth and connecting. And then the other pole, right? It's all about polarity, plus charge, minus charge. If you want to become a bio battery, we've got to attend to our poles. And the plus is actually toward the ionosphere. The atmosphere of the earth is literally positively ionically charged. So when I'm talking about resetting our bodies to be potent biological batteries, this is a very literal concept, right? The earth is negatively ionically charged. So now in this moment, you are serving as the place where plus and minus join, much like yin and yang. The earth being the yin pole, the feminine pole, and the higher realms being the yang pole, the masculine pole. In the naming of that, I imagined, or I would actually claim that what happened for me is a more potent expression of the electrical current running through the central axis of my body and this space. Okay, I think we got it. I can feel it. Now, the challenge I have to all of us is, can we stay connected to the sense of this emerging electrical circuit cycling between the earth and the ionosphere while we take a small portion of our attention to track a little bit of academic information that I'm going to translate to you now? And my theory, and we're doing research in this moment, is that staying connected to your body, staying aware of your participation in this powerful, infinite current is actually going to create more ease in learning and more enjoyment in learning, and less effort, no work, right? So we're essentially syncing up and connecting to one another in this space. It's a bit, I can use the analogy of a flock of birds in murmuration, right? All one big flow of connected intelligence and power. We're actually wired to exist this way, the nature of being tribal, right? It's very, very, very basic. Very, very, very basic. Very, very basic. Your being may have a sense of, oh, I'm arriving back home. Even if you haven't felt this since you were very small, right? When we're born, this is all very native. behavior, and then it slowly goes to sleep, and we don't remember that this is our native state, our essential self. And as we make our way back, I have the sense of, oh, is it really that simple? And my response is yes, it's really that simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it's easy because there are all sorts of ways the ego may block you obviating its necessity to some degree. Ah, okay. All right. Staying here, if you find yourself beginning to depart, tune in again to your lower body, widen your perceptual field to the right amount of space around you. Right? This is how Native peoples tuned into what the weather was doing and where the predators were, and right, is this these receiving of this subtle information from the environment is really what we're wired to do. Okay, I'm going to read these statements I made about what your book was supposed to do for you, and then I'm going to speak to them and invite questions. Okay. Powerful, magical ways to restore power, resilience, flow, and that youthful glow. I made that claim. Well, I'm feeling my skin be warm right now. And if I looked in the mirror, and I have this predictably happen with patients, as we begin to run vital energy through the body, it's electrical, literally measurably electrical. And the analogy I love to use is like static cling on a sock. The life force comes in, the cells literally expand. In doing so, there's more space. More space. So I have the ability now to, I didn't used to, but to feel blood and lymph and fluids, literal fluids in the body begin to be able to move because there's more space, right? So you may feel in this moment some sense of your body thawing a bit, like your foot coming back from being asleep. As we drop in, there's a softness that comes into the tissues. This creating of space, and when the blood comes in, just like after you get up after sitting on your foot, there's like there could be that tingly pins and needles feeling of your cells literally coming back from being asleep. And the naming of that, I think it's important to tell you, it might be a little bit awkward, just like it can be when that very awkward transitional moment that's sort of bittersweet when you can begin to feel your foot again, but it sort of hurts, right? So I just described powerful, magical ways to restore power, resilience, flow, and literally that youthful glow. If you had a mirror in front of you right now, you might see some rosy, some pink response coming into your face. I'm going to pause now and see if anyone wants to mention, reflect, or ask a question about anything I've said to this point. Anything about the seating, anything about an experience you had that you'd like some feedback on. Holly, go ahead.
I'm in awe of how shifting my seat balance that little bit felt so wonderful. And I'm a little enjoying the mind blowing of that right now because I'm very seldom comfortable. And yeah, thank you.
It's so huge. I think I discovered this, 15 years ago. And I had a friend who just didn't let me treat him, or, we just didn't have that kind of connection or relationship. And he was suffering for weeks and weeks with back pain. And I said, just change the angle of your seat. We're all sitting in holes most of the time. Chairs are designed to basically put all of this to sleep. It's so perplexing. Oh, what is it? Oh,
I went to a 75 inch ab ball for a chair at my desk, and it's been the best thing I've done. And so this is, but when the air gets a little bit out, it changes. So this is all, and as I don't know if you know, I'm a saddle fitter, so I balance riders in their saddle, and I know how much that 1 degree shift in the pelvis completely changes the way the body moves, connects, they can ride. And I just hadn't done it for myself. So that's part
Wow.
of the self care, isn't it?
Isn't that ironic? It's
Yeah,
so
it's a little
uncomfortable.
ironic thing.
It happens to me all the time. I'm so amused when I see those, suddenly that blind spot reveals itself. It happened to me recently. I don't remember the circumstances. You named a couple things that I brought up, important things I want to share. One is that 1 degree shift can be so potent, but guess what? In 5 minutes, it might need to be a degree in the other direction. Or it's like this idea that as we begin to soften and thaw and literally shift density in the body, we're literally shifting from more dense to less dense. And what will be your sweet spot in 2 seconds can be very different, right? So it's like a real time thawing, shifting. Um,
Well, I think
uh,
that highlights some of the interesting circles we all go through when we're working on balancing horse and rider because, yeah, it's a really awesome thought for me to carry on with. Thank you. I really am glad you said that.
it's so interesting too how we will literally remodel the spine, right? So if you actually imaged yourself, took a picture in the mirror of what your posture looked like standing, once we begin to even, I mean, I do this all the time now unconsciously, but in the beginning, maybe I'd remember to, sit well and feel into the waves moving through my body, maybe 5 minutes a day, maybe on a commute or something. Over time, your skeleton will remodel, meaning it will become a different shape. This basically, I will call it micronizing and reconstituting. Sometimes I use the analogy of shape shifting from particle to light. Uh, it's literal, measurable,
Could you
very
repeat that? It was micronizing and
micronizing and reconstituting. Right?
thank.
I actually feel people's bodies and they feel kind of like freeze dried food you take camping or beef
Yes,
jerky.
yes. No, I work on horses and I totally know what you're talking about.
Right? And so, oh God, we could say so many points on this. It that the reason that a lot of what people say about what's possible in the body is only possible when we're young is because when we're young, when we're still growing, we have a lot more life force running through the body. And of course, developmentally, there's a lot of change happening. And my experience is that at any age, we can tap into this
Hmm.
state. It takes a little bit longer, maybe. Other things that can support the melting and reforming process are also in the book, right? This is let's see, there are a few more pieces that I did not include in the book because I just didn't want to make it that long, but I'll tell a story. This is a great time for a story. And then I'm hoping people are collecting questions and we're just going to keep going through. We're going to be conversationing around your curiosities. So much fun for me. So I think I mentioned in the last webinar, and I want to make sure that you have that one because it's a really wonderful preamble to the content today. That I talked about the tongue. I talked about how the tongue on the roof of the mouth, and I'm going to go through details soon, sort of sets the entire current experience. It's very, very profound in some medical ways and in some energetic ways, as if those are separate. And then my assistant just put an article I wrote about the topic. Please grab that from the chat. It'll also come through with the replay. And the thing I wanted to say is that the story I wanted to tell you. It's important to shift gears every once in a while. Story time. I had a woman come from England actually, and I saw her one time at a retreat center I was working for. And I noticed that she had the classic sort of rigidity response in her spine, which also comes along with losing tone in the buttocks, right? If you're not moving like a wave, you're not recruiting the muscles of the back body. If you're shortening anteriorly, you aren't able to actually use the muscles of the back body, which by the way correspond with the parasympathetic nervous system. And so the spine models, right? We've been talking about the remodeling of the spine toward something that expresses more of this serpent like, not even shape, right? We're moving away from shape and more to function, where we restore the body to this fluid function. She did not have a fluid function. She also had not only a very stiff, straight spine and lack of tone in the posterior body, but she had a lot of skin drooping around the face and the upper neck, and also just a very tight nature, right? Very kind of sullen and grumpy and um, she's quite faded in her energy, right? So I had this woman who is a perfect example of unglow happening. And she also had a fairly significant case of rheumatoid arthritis with this distortion of the joints of both of her hands that was fairly radical. And we did one session where we practiced simply the refreshing of this circuit so that she could remember where it was, right? We do this. We can do this with a wonderful yoga class or other kinds of healing. And in osteopathy, we do this. And my goal with her was feel where we have arrived, bookmark this in your consciousness, and then I'm going to show you how to perpetuate it, right? I simply reset her like tuning the idle on an engine. And now I said, you got to go drive this race car in the particular way that suits it to keep the engine really purring, right? So we got a few things in place. We got not sitting in a hole happening, right? She really got to understand how to dissolve powerfully wherever she was seated and not to let the body collapse and literally deflate. I feel like, oh, I don't pay attention to this stuff consciously, but I can start to feel if I'm out in the world and all of a sudden feel like a hot air balloon a lot of the time. The balloon will start to deflate and cool down. And then I'll go, oh, what's happening? I need to modify what I'm doing, or I get to. It's not an obligation, it's an invitation to come back to feeling amazing. So we did this correcting of really imprinting on her imagination the difference in the feeling of sitting in a way that shuts down the bio battery versus sitting in a way that allows it to express. And we just tune into the brightness and let the brightness experience guide us. Oh, I'm not right here. Oh, I'm right here. Okay, I'll move in that direction. You don't even have to know the details aren't important. Follow the electricity, follow the brightness, follow whatever it is that lights your being up. That may actually reflect as literal heat and pulsing um, and a softness coming into the face and the breath, which is quite literal. Okay, back to the story. So we did this really imprinting. So much of it is mindset and imagination, 99.9%. Says our imagination really does affect physical reality and create our physical reality. And so we did this. What's the difference between sitting in a hole and not sitting in a hole? Sensorily, you can ask yourself in this moment. And then setting ourselves up, once we actually sit in flow, we get out of our chairs and then we can walk in flow, which is 180 degrees opposite of how particularly Americans use their body moving through space in a gait. I didn't put this natural walking aspect in the book. There is just a lot, but I have to explain it for the purpose of the story. And it takes practice, right? All of these things take kind of deepening the sensory. It's like the knowing has to come back to life. The knowing, the deep original memory that we were born with kind of has to be resuscitated, or um, it has to sort of be archaeologically excavated out of there, um, with practice over time. So that is why the course I created is 7 weeks long, right? It actually takes us getting together, practicing thawing, and deepening our imaginations, ability to really receive really have these concepts land deeply such that they become actual for us. Okay, I keep digressing from the story. Must love to do that. So I taught her. We practiced. We had so much fun. We practiced flow sitting, what that really feels like, till it just really registered in your system, which I hope it's doing for you right now. And then, as an extension of flow sitting, we practiced flow walking, which the muscles were available for once we reset and woke up the back body and unshorten the front body. And then I taught her how to have her tongue hold the whole thing. Simply resting the tongue across the roof of the mouth activates the vagal pathway, recapitulates the intensely soothing behavior of mimics breastfeeding every time we swallow. If our tongue is actually positioned there and free to move northward, which we do some troubleshooting around that, we have the effects of 1 to 6 pounds of pressure, 1 to 2,000 times a day, which pumps this whole thing, right? We're actually springs. The body's constantly expanding and contracting like all things in nature. So is the breath, so is the life force circulation, expanding and contracting. We're simply restoring our bodies to this full system, subtle and physical breath coupled in one smooth rhythmic response or participation. So somehow in the hour that I was together with this woman, we got all of this kind of registered in her being. And then she spent a month practicing getting the power of the swallow together. It's pretty simple. The article that my assistant put in the chat kind of walks you through the self practicing there. We got her sitting in a way that she just started to love this fluid state. So she just stayed there. And then the deepening of it, the literally with the walking, we end up freeing up joints in the body and really, really supporting the spine, restoring to this supple, fluid, moldable state. And I think she was 65 years old, not well and not happy in her life. And I saw her then again 1 month later, and that's a phenomenal story. How much more light there was in her face, and how much more tone there was in her. Uh, I mean, I really should. I really should have taken pictures before and after. I rarely do that. But she had this carriage where her shoulders were back, and she had really nice round, shapes of her muscles of her back body and her buttocks, which it's just so supportive energetically. It's evidence that the parasympathetic nervous system is actually able to partner with the sympathetic, and in that way renders the sympathetic nervous system accessible for play. Right? It's actually a mobilization circuit. It's not just fight or flight. It's energizing. Okay, wow. I'm really a storyteller, primarily, more than anything else. I'll pause now and see if anyone wants to chime in or ask a question. Mary, go ahead.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I apologize. I've read some of your work, and I apologize I haven't read what you sent me, but I plan to do it very soon. I'm very interested in the whole dynamic of what you're teaching, and especially I'm a little confused with the tongue. When I try to rest it up, like you said, to touch that soft spot at the top, like, is this something that will be permanently resting like that if we get into it? Like, how do we really sit our tongue? Do we
Hmm.
play with the roof or do we just,
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that. It's really
yeah,
confusing. This is a
yeah,
confusing point for people. I think there's a really powerful dissociation around, and I, by the way, had this. I've had a lot of these issues myself, which is wonderful because it really helped me understand them. So I have an image in the ebook of the
mhm,
tongue resting completely across the roof of the mouth. Right now, for a lot of us, the really powerfully impactful contact is more posteriorly back, where the soft palate and the hard palate meet. Can everyone feel that? I'm going to show you here. My tongue is completely covering, and I'm actually moving in the swallow. You see how my finger can almost move into be concealed by a space at the top of the neck. See if you can actually feel enough space for your finger to seat in that junction of your neck and your jaws. When you swallow, do you feel that space lifting? Right.
mhm,
And then a lot of the time, what can help is
mhm,
because most of us, for whatever reason, we breathe through our mouths because maybe our noses are congested, and then these muscles get really lax, and then they kind of get sticky down here. So it
mm,
can be really helpful to go in there, even from the outside, and start to do what we call myofascial release.
mm,
Just noticing, like, oh, is this fascia really able to stretch? And then in the, not so much the ebook, but the article that I posted in the chat actually walks us through some of the ways that I love to have people have fun
mhm,
with developing more muscular integrity over time, more strength and function, like just suctioning the tongue to the roof of the mouth.
mhm, mhm,
Most people can't do that. They do like, there's no power yet. So it actually is a very, very large muscle, and the strength comes back quickly. Did I answer
mhm.
your question?
Yes, yes. And I don't know if you remember, but I did send you an email once, and I have a difficulty with the rhythm of swallowing liquids.
Mm,
And I have been in fight and flight for so many years that one doctor told me that I'm in sort of freeze and I need to thaw
mhm,
out.
mhm.
So I'm just concerned and I want to learn so much how to get that back, like how to get the swallowing and the rhythm back in that area for the brain to be connected to the body,
Do you
you know?
know that I would say more than half my patients have more than half of the people I just see on the street. I know how I can spot evidence of the dysfunction and the fight or flight state that people are so used to, they don't realize they're living there.
I believe you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. I believe you. And I'm
yeah,
becoming aware of this now. I'm so
yeah.
grateful that I came on to you.
It's
Listen,
time.
yeah, it's
It's
time.
really
So,
time, because we're not able to be fully present if
yeah,
we're spinning, right? And
yes, yes.
so the uvula, the little dangly, at the back
Mhm.
of the throat, that's actually innervated by the cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve. If you're
Mm,
crowded and not right, if the tissues aren't toned back there, every swallow could be actually smashing that uvula and knocking out your vagal pathway.
oh,
So
wow.
we go through in my training, and I appreciate you for mentioning this. There are a lot of little pieces to tease
Mhm,
out, and people have individual issues. So we spend 4 weeks on this in
mhm,
my training. We do 2 weeks just on understanding what it is we're looking for, and then we do and also basics of self training, and then treating. And then we also work with redeveloping a functional breath and airway, which are extensions of a well functioning tongue. If you're,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
how primary the breath is to a functioning nervous system and energetic body, the
Yeah.
breath is an extension of our chi, or vice
Yes.
versa. And
Yes.
if you can't breathe well, you're going to have a challenging time with flow and glow, and just being present and participating in your life.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna look into trying to I want to learn that.
everything about the training that you would need to know will be below the video when we load it
Okay.
up to YouTube.
Okay. Okay.
And um, there's all kinds of different ways to participate. I've created some really affordable ways for people.
That's great.
And
So
yeah, yeah,
just one
yeah.
last question. If I
Yeah.
just wanted to learn just that section for the 4 weeks, can I just take that as a beginning
Well,
or
it's all
no?
one thing. Like, I'll
It's all
tell
just
you, people, this is so fun. Like, okay, there's a famous dentist in England named John Mew and Mike Mew, his son. They're not extremely osteopathic in their approach. I gleaned some things from their training of tongue function. You can look up mewing if you want to, and it's a full body thing. So this business of sitting, like in my class, I'll just tell you what we do. How about that? And how it supports tongue function. The first meeting, we basically go over the arc of the whole course and how all the pieces contribute to this ultimate state of coherence that we want to achieve. And I
mm-hmm.
explain how each of the 13 pieces is like, I use the analogy of, um, there's a story about blindfolded people touching an elephant, and one's touching a foot, and one's touching a trunk, and one's touching a tail, and they're saying, "Oh, this is a tail. Oh, this is a trunk." Well, they're all right, but it's each of the 13 pieces create this cohesive whole where it brings in all the parts to allow actually support the transformation happening. So in
Mm,
the beginning, I explained that, like, how are we going to make this course accomplish that for ourselves? What are all the pieces? And then the second and third, we actually learn how to get present neuroplastically. The entire
mm,
course is we're rewiring our nervous systems and growing new neurons and growing
mm,
meridians in the support of the container of the field. It's a
mm,
cultivation like growing a garden. That's why we need
mm,
a stretch of weeks, right? We need to practice because you'll
mm,
be disoriented, but someone else in the group or me can reflect what this thing is till you receive it as almost like a transmission. It's not even so much something you receive in words, right? We receive consciousness through each other's systems. So
mm,
when someone can hold the energetic or the awareness or the consciousness of some knowledge, behavior, or function, other we learn this way. This is modeling. This is mirroring. They talk about mirror neurons, but the mechanism is much deeper. It's a energetic exchange of intelligence and power that we do when we gather, which is the nature of tribal being. So the third, I think we spend two sessions really deepening our understanding of what's possible and getting our mindset on board and really practicing presencing, dropping into present time and space and connecting.
that's important. Yeah.
It's everything, right? We
Mm-hmm.
really get a sense of coherence. We really anchor, we really land, we really begin to sense being held by the container of the class.
Mm-hmm.
Not only to support the progression of learning, but to support the safety of releasing what will come through your body as you wake up. Right, you're going to
Mm,
have energy moving, cell memory moving.
mm,
It can be very intense, but the group is where it's meant to be held and metabolized. It's really so much more effective and safe than one-on-one healing.
yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then so what do? Then we go into sitting and walking. John Mew talks about tongue training in the context of posture. It's all one thing. You're not going to change the cranium without changing the sacrum. It's the pelvis and the skull and the pelvis mirror one another as we restore to this full body spring like action. And then the tongue begins to be um, restore to its placeholder of this full body coordinated expanding and contracting breath. So we pull in piece after piece after piece, then we get the breath reset. The breath holds it all together as well. The breath begins to tonify the nervous system by continuing to move energy, and also mechanical motion starts to happen around the kidney, adrenal.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's all these pieces, and because every single bit of it is our basically returning to something our bodies knew when we were born. The pieces begin to fall into place because they're all we have cell memory, like muscle memory if you work. We have
Yes.
cell memory for all of these things. So even though the mind is very disoriented, um, our beings really know, and we start to land in these familiar native channels, and it's like, oh my god, thank you. The nourishment, it's like we open a gate in this, we begin to widen our receiving
And
our
I can
receiving channels and our receiving ability.
and I can see how healing can begin. It sounds like a total rebirth. Sounds wonderful. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
no one's
Yeah.
ever said that, but
Oh,
I'm on board.
okay. I
Right.
can feel it as you're saying it. That's what I want.
Yeah, it's like a resuscitation to our
Yes,
original self. It's
yes,
exactly
yes,
what it is. Would you call it
yes.
rebirthing? I think we could say that in a sense.
Well, you know what? It's new life coming into the body. So yes, if you've been kind of like dead and like this, I would say, yeah, it's like coming alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're reminding me that my teacher, many of my teachers, Dr. Jim Jellis, I'm naming Dr. Stefan Agopian, Tamsin Feeney, um, Viola Fryman. There's this picture that osteopaths have on their wall, many of them. It was a big hands holding this tiny, tiny little baby. And for
Oh,
years and years, I did not know what it was about. And then I somehow it clicked, and I was like, oh, we're all innocent little baby at,
yes.
at our root, right? Like no matter what age of the person, once we start to return to our native state, we begin to connect with that ageless part of ourselves.
Can I
And
just say one more thing? You just brought
yeah,
a memory to me very quickly. When I was in Italy when I was 9 years old, my grandmother had a calendar and it was a baby and it showed each stage of life. And then it
mm,
showed a grandmother turning back into a baby position. And I wanted to take it home and
mm.
I did it. I don't want to turn back into that baby position. I want to be in alignment. So thank you for that. That's what you
You're
just reminded.
welcome.
Yeah.
There is like child's pose in yoga, right? There's a way to be fetal and melted. It's not it's different than this contracting and shortening of the front body and closing around the heart in fear, right? One
Mhm.
is safety, one is occurring in a state of safety and holding, and the other is occurring in defense and contraction. So that's
Oh,
why we go back to really invoking safety, and we get into the psychology of really even your boundaries. Like a lot of your
mhm.
safety comes from your own tending of your space and your
Yeah.
communication with people in your life. There
Yes.
are a lot of
Oh,
bits and pieces to what I one of the spoof names of this course is Cultural Conditioning Anonymous, because we're basically
oh, wow.
undoing pretty much everything we're taught.
So, um, a few weeks ago, I had a fall, and there was some whiplash associated with it. And that combined with years of sitting in poor posture, my body wants to curl forward. There is definitely some resistance towards sitting straight. And then I say resistance. I can't last long if I try to really kind of pull my head up and pay attention to it. It seems to tighten
Yeah, you're
like
right.
pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
so, do you recommend shorter periods of trying that?
I recommend lying down and doing your dissolving practice horizontal before you. Yeah, at first, so we never push into anything. We're going into ease and melting.
Okay.
So you will definitely, if you start to feel tension or the body contract, that's the opposite of, oh, I'm dissolving and becoming bright. And, right. We want to track this brightening and dissolving response. Whatever you need to do to support the body responding that way. And often what I will do is I will lie on the floor or on my bed and I will just start to track that brightness and electricity until I invoke this full body serpent like response. And then I'll just let myself ride myself free. I go into a bit of a trance doing this. Sometimes you can slow and tune into the breath. Sometimes a little bit of a hum might come through that we can invoke to start to vibrate the body free. And I'm describing continuum movement, which is a very osteopathic, self dissolving, but so powerful in groups. Some of the most powerfully transformative experiences I've had are in the group dissolving practice. And so we also do it in my class. We did some today, right? And there'll be resistance also because there are very deep unconscious ways that we resist being thawed. And maybe there's a sense of, oh, that's vulnerable, or oh, I won't be myself, or oh, I won't be in control, right? And I find this, we need to do a little bit of deep diving with my people who have frequent accidents, right? Because I was just thinking about this recently. A person with frequent accidenting happening, there's typically something the body's calling for. Firstly, if you're not able to fill your space and create this buoyant force field with your attention, you're kind of a vacuum. This is a theory. I saw it a few days ago. I'm like, oh yeah, people actually attract distortion and disruption when they're not fully occupying their space. It's as though this becoming bright and full and flowy and fluid is actually a buoyant protective bubble that we exist in, and it actually is actually. And so without that, it's like this vacuum that attracts all of this. And I think the disruption, the attract, it's brilliant because we're gonna have difficult experiences and discomfort until we kind of get the message right. It's like your body saying, come back, I need you to come back. And even though it's uncomfortable to have an accident or pain, your body, in a sense, if we want to flip and get into the mindset part of this, your body is not giving up on you. Hello, I need you back. Hello, I need you back. I'm just going to get louder and louder and create more, motivation by way of discomfort till you hear me. So, yeah, we talk a lot about shifting to glass half full, because there's always a glass half full way of couching an experience that can actually bring a lot of life into the body. Thank you, Bobby. That was an amazing question. Oh, I want to see all of you in my training. We start next Tuesday. And I know almost nobody can make it to every class. So there's a way of participating where, you just come when you can. And then I've received the feedback that the videos, the recordings transmit quite, people love being present, but they get what they need from even just listening to the replay. Someone else had their hand up. Go ahead, Ruth.
Hi, thank you so much. This is beautiful. A few people asked in the chat, and I'm curious, is there a chair that you recommend that helps facilitate this correct posture?
Oh, yes. I love a wedge that modifies just about any chair because we sit in a lot of different places. And actually, my assistant can put that in the chat now for all of you. That there's nothing that beats this because we sit in so many different places. You can bring it into your car. You can put it on a picnic bench.
That's kind of what I've been using to do that, but
The body likes variety. Now I'm remembering it was something Holly said about she was using the ball, right? It's like there's no one right way. I have a chair that is very affordable. That is one of these rolly chairs where it has a little back on it, and I like a dental hygienist might use, and then I flip it around. I put the back of the chair on my belly and I drop my knees. And that's something that's really can be really comfortable for an hour or two. And then I'm like, oh, what do I want now? I want to go sit on the edge of a chair. Oh, what do I want now? I want to create zero gravity in a reclined position on the couch, which generally means putting a bunch of pillows under my low back, maybe something under my head, maybe my legs are on an ottoman. The picture is in the ebook. Time to go again. Make sure you have it. And I'll put it in the replay of the video down below where you creating this effortless, buoyant, sweet spot positioning, which can change moment to moment, but you'll find it. You'll find the way that supports your body that allows wave motion and brightness to start to come through. And in a week, it'll be different, right? So you get to train your attention to go in and really attune to nuance. And because energy and healing follow attention, when your attention becomes cultivated to be more refined, responsive, noticing of more nuance, you're actually developing a superpower that you're going to be using to transform your body in real time in every moment of your life. And it becomes effortless. It's all returning to a native state. At one point, it just clicks in and you're just dissolving all the time and hydrating and receiving all the time. So as far as what this chair is, anyone who actually wants to know the one that I found that I really love, and it's under $200, just send us an email on that because I don't have a link right in this moment. I'll make sure you get that room. Any other questions?
I will say thanks again. It's the timing. I just happened to randomly show up today, and it's just been perfect what I needed. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. All right, everyone. Everything I referenced, because obviously people listening to the replay won't have the chat, but we'll put the links that I mentioned down below the chat, as well as the information on the class. And I have discount coupons for different ways to participate to make sure that it's affordable. No one need not participate for financial reasons. So call us, write to us, and we'll work with you on that. Okay. Any last burners before we unmic and say goodbye to each other? Goodbye for now, because I'll hopefully see you again soon. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
thank you.
Bye.
Awesome.
Bye. For information on our more extended trainings, which offer continuing medical education credits for physicians, email us at courses@flowismedicine.com. And please subscribe to this YouTube library archive if you wish to receive future updates.